they're talking about these personal carbon allowances that we're going to have that are going to be part of this, I guess, health passport, or we're going to have some kind of digital passport, which is going to be used for COVID and for our carbon allowance. And you on your website, you call it climate bullocks, as you so eloquently put it. And all we hear from the UN and their NGOs today is the pandemic and climate. That's their 1-2 punch, which, from my perspective, serves as pretext for global domination. They call it, they say themselves, global government, world government, and they're now pushing net zero, which you have been talking about. And as I said, these unbelievable personal carbon allowances, which they're going to limit. They want to take away our meats, no more meats. They want to take away our private vehicles. And so what would be your comment on the climate agenda and these, digital passports?
Well, certainly this is all and has been about the beginning for digital passports. I said that on day one, that this is simply the path where people think that they're having a passport for their own good. Now, and a lot of them do. The majority probably do. And I made this point when I'm speaking at universities to undergraduates. In the old days, the medieval kings would come and steal your cattle, steal your lady, steal your gold, steal everything from you because he was the king. And he was an honest thief. He would say, I'm taking this because I can, I've got a sword, I've got men behind me, and I'm a psycho-sociopath, I admit it, I'm the king. So anyway, but pretty straightforward. You've got to warm to the guy because he's honest. Now we have government saying, taking our money, restricting our freedoms, it's for our own benefit. They're saying it's for your benefit. And they get together from all over the world as they fly in their private jets to say, we've got to do something about the little people producing carbon dioxide, with no sense of irony, the fact that they've flown there in their private jets and their chauffeur-driven limousines whatsoever. The sea's rising, and they've all got wonderful houses on the beach. There isn't a single multi-millionaire billionaire who doesn't have a beachfront house. No one. So they don't believe it themselves. So the whole thing is absolutely nonsense. But the trouble is, the problem that we're having in the media, even those people who are pushing back a little bit about it are saying, but net zero is going to be too expensive. The Chinese aren't playing the game. The Russians aren't playing the game. We can't afford it. It'll make energy too expensive. But what they're doing, they're starting the argument in chapter 2. They need to go to chapter 1. And the question they need to say is, man-made carbon dioxide going to boil the planet? That's the question we need. It's chapter 1. Don't come in at chapter 2. So I want somebody, and I was on the Environmental Committee in the European Union Parliament for 5 years, and nobody could explain this to me. Can you explain the Minoan warm period, the Roman warm period, the medieval warm period, the 18th century mini ice age, so on and so forth, where nobody was producing much in the way of carbon dioxide except breathing it out? So we've seen these fluctuations in climate time and time again. Then you have a look at how much carbon dioxide is actually in the atmosphere, which I think off the top of my head is 0.04% or something of that nature of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Then you have to have a look at how much of that is produced is man-made, which I think is around about 3%. Then you have a little look at what Great Britain produces, which I think is something like 1 and a tiny bit percent. So are we going to close down the British economy for something which A, is not proven, the hypothesis is not proven, and I've had to listen to this for 20 years, that the world is going to... I've listened to this for 20 years. I keep looking out of the window wondering when it's going to happen, and it doesn't happen. Nobody's asking these questions. And if you look at the press of the 1970s, The Guardian over here is the favoured newspaper of choice for the left wing. The headline ran, I think it was 1974, we are going into a mini ice age. That was 1974. There has to be a crisis. There has to always be a crisis. And it just goes following on and on and on. And the sad thing is we have politicians and probably now a whole generation, I would say this, wouldn't I, as an old man, a generation, if not two generations, who have not had the benefit of a traditional education. They've got a college degree, but I don't mean that. They've got something on the wall in a frame in the lavatory. Yeah, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a traditional education. And the Australian question guy, I saw it a couple of days, he asked the junior minister in the government who was advocating all this economic change for the so-called climate crisis, and he asked her how much carbon dioxide there was in the atmosphere and what was Australia's contribution to it. And she didn't know. She didn't know because she hadn't had the benefit of traditional education. She couldn't bother to do any homework before she came on TV. She was an incredibly stupid woman. And I used to sit round committees in the European Parliament who were adjudicating on regulation for investment trusts, hedge funds, and all the rest of it. They were Danish housewives, Bulgarian socialists, all sorts of people. I spent half the time in the committee explaining what they were about to legislate on. These people's ignorance is stunning. It's absolutely mind-bending how ignorant and stupid these people are, but they have the levers of power. And they go on having the levers of power because in North America and Great Britain, you vote red or you vote blue. So I live in a part of the world which is a rural community, sparsely populated, rather charming. If you put a blue rosette here on a dog turd, people would vote for it. Across the river, if you put a red one on a dog turd across the river, they'd vote for it there because that's a red county. We will never break out of this until we change the system. And if you want to be elected to Parliament or Congress in North America, you're not allowed to wear a badge. You're not allowed to. What you've got to do is you've got to say, I'm Godfrey Bloom and I believe in the following things. Vote for me. No badges, just my name. And I'll stand on the stump and have a go, and I'll hand out my leaflets with what I believe in. And then we would get a Congress or a Parliament which actually reflects what people believe. I have never been in a democracy ever, and I've worked in France, I've worked in Belgium, and I know America reasonably well, the United States reasonably well. I haven't ever met anybody who thought the government was doing a good job or the government was doing what they wanted. No one, not once, not ever. What they do is they say, well, he's not as bad as the other guy. The other guy would have been a disaster. So we had, now, of course, America's ended up with Biden, who should be in a leafy home in the suburbs to see out his twilight years, dribbling down his cardigan. He's in charge of one of the most powerful countries on the face of the planet. It's democracy for you. Don't work.